Now, a lot of times, and this is usually taught in middle school. Yes. Yes. Okay. You solve a problem by guess and check. Like if I said, what if I told you two numbers add to 50 and one number is 10 more than the other? Two numbers add to 50, one number is 10 more than the other. What are the two numbers? One is 10 more than the other, not 20 more than the other. You're on the right track. 30, yeah, 20 plus 30, or 30 plus 20. So how did you get that? How were you figuring that out? So you were kind of using some logic and sort of guessing and testing a little bit. Right. Okay. Those kind of questions we can actually solve by using algebra. We don't have to worry about doing a lot of guessing and checking in our head, especially if the numbers are more complicated. Okay. Here's the 3 steps that we do for solving an equation, or solving a word problem using an equation. So let's start with the first example. Okay. And we're going to do the 3 steps. So we've got Herman and Edgar, each went for a walk. We know that Herman walked 13 kilometers more than Edgar, and together they walked a total distance of 35. Now you can probably figure this out in your head, okay? But let's use algebra to find out how far each person walked. So the first thing is, how many unknowns in this question? 1 or 2, right? How far Herman went, how far Edgar went. So I need to come up with algebraic expressions for each one. When we do questions like this, one of them is always going to be called X. One of them always. Okay? I'm going to call Edgar X because Herman went further. So I'm actually going to call Edgar X. If Edgar is X and Herman went 13 more, what would be an expression for Herman? X plus 13. We've done step 1. We've made expressions for our unknowns. Now, we could have called Herman X and then Edgar X minus 13. That would have worked too. Okay. Now that we've got these, we're going to make our equation. This distance and this distance must add to what, according to the question? 35. So X plus 13, which is Herman's distance, plus X, which is Edgar's distance, add up to a total of 35, which they walk together. Well, you should know how to solve this one. You can solve quite a few equations. What's the next step? Yeah, simplify the left side by combining the x's. And now it's just a matter of getting x by itself by moving stuff over. What do I do next? Subtract 13 from both sides, and I get 2x is equal to 22. Last step, divide both sides by 2, and x is equal to 11. And what does that 11 represent if we go back to step 1? Specifically who? Edgar, right? So Edgar went 11. And we can calculate how far Herman went. 11 plus 13, right? So our final step in these is to write a sentence with the answers. So we would say, Edgar walked 11 kilometers. And Herman walked 13 more than 11. So 11 plus 13, which is 24. You don't have to write 11 plus 13. You can just write 24. But I always like to show where that 24 is coming from. Okay? So that's how we solve word problems using algebra whenever there's some unknowns. So let's look at a couple more. Okay? Usually there's two unknowns. Sometimes there might be more. Excellent. Some number and 5 times that number add up, have a sum, add up to 96. Okay? First thing, remember, I want you to show me step by step. How many unknowns? Some number and 5 times that number. Not just one unknown. Isn't there 2? This one and this one, right? So I'll just say number 1, I'm going to call x. Number 2, I know is 5 times this number, 5x.
Isn't it x plus 5x equals 96?
Yes, so that's the second part. When I add these two unknown numbers, x and 5x, I get 96. Well, I can simplify the left to make this x plus 5x, 6x. Now I've only got one step to get x by itself. Divide both sides by 6. 16, which represents, if we go back up here, the first number. So I know, I'll just write it here, one number is 16, and the other is, how do I find it? Don't I find it by doing 5 times 16? Right? Yes. I have to do 5 times 16, which is 8. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, that'll work too. Okay? Last one we'll look at for this. We're going to look at more word problems, but I want to keep them pretty straightforward today. And then we'll get into a little bit more complicated ones. Yes. So, and I was going to talk about that. Okay, Herman, Sherman, and Edgar had 76 bucks. Sherman had twice as much money as Herman. Edgar had 24 more dollars than Herman. How much did each person have? How many unknowns in this one? 3. There is Herman, there is Sherman, and there is Edgar. One of them is called X. And usually we call the one with the smallest amount X. Who has the smallest amount? Sorry? Herman, right? Because Sherman has twice as much as him, and Edgar has 24 more bucks than him. So let's call Herman X. Sherman had twice as much as this. 2x. Edgar had 24 more than this. Right, remember the difference between times and more than. Like twice means times, more than means plus. What's the equation?
X plus 2x plus 24 equals 76.
Exactly. If I add all of these up, it equals the total amount they have together, which the question tells me is $76. Well, before I start moving things, I can simplify. I can combine these three to make what? 4x. Now what? Subtract 24 from both sides, and that gives me 4x is equal to 52. Divide by 4. Therefore, x is 13. See? Because the original one says add 24. We want to get rid of the 24. Like, how do you get rid of plus 24? Yeah. Okay. So now we're ready to write our solution. So remember who X is, that's Herman. So Herman had $13. Sherman had twice that. Had 2 times 13, which is what? $26. And Edgar, remember, keep track of things, has 13 more, sorry, 24 more than Herman. Okay, so 13 plus 24 gives me $37. Okay. Those are the ones I want to look at today. Like I said, we're going to do a few more other types of problems. Well, we'll see. We'll do them more or next week. So